Good morning. I'm Troy Lawrence, Deacon at Lazy Chapel Baptist Church here in Macon, Georgia. And I wanted to speak to you this morning and ask you one question. Are you saved? You know, I was asked that question several times. And at the time I was young and I really didn't know what that meant. So are you saved? Well, let me tell you how I found out I was saved. I heard about Christ my whole life. I heard about church. But the one thing my aunts and uncles used to do was scare me with God. God's going to get you if you're bad. God's going to get you if you do this. And I was really scared of that. But we went to church with my grandmother all the time and we heard great stories. My mother moved us from New Jersey to Georgia and we didn't go to church as much, but we still attended church and we would hear these sermons. And I didn't hear in these sermons the same thing that my aunts and uncles were telling me. So as I got older, I listened to these sermons and it kind of touched me, and then I went in the military. And when I got in the military, I ran into a lot of people, sergeants and instructors and civilians that were going to church. So I decided to go to church. And I would go to the church on base, and it was a little different from my church at home, but I was still getting the word. Now for me, that's what I wanted, the word, because I didn't know it was the word at the time, but it was the stories that they taught. That's what I wanted. Later in life, when I was in my second marriage, my wife and I had a son born in Germany, born premature. Weighed about 1 pound and 3 ounces. We had to take him to this hospital, children's hospital, and she was really distraught, and so was I. And we waited a couple of days for him to get better, and then the doctor approached us and said, look, we don't know if your son will be able to talk, we don't know if your son will be able to see, we don't know if your son will be able to hear. However, he might. And when we left that hospital that afternoon, we didn't know what to do. And we were riding back to our base. I thought about my grandmother and these other stories I'd heard. And I never said anything to my wife. And when I got home, I went in the bathroom and I prayed. Don't get me wrong, I don't know if I was praying right. I don't know what I was doing, but I just prayed. I said, God, what should we do? What can I do? I've got other children. It's right before Christmas. What should I do? Well, when I woke up that morning, I felt this relief. And it's like someone told me, let him go. Just let him go. Just give him to me, let him go. And so that's what I did. And listen to this. I had never confessed that I believed in Christ. I had never had that moment. But that, in hindsight, was my moment. Because I was reaching out to someone that I hadn't committed a conversation with, and they reached back. And so we took my son off of life support, and shortly thereafter, he passed away. We came back to Macon and we buried him on Christmas Eve. We had other children. We were able to get them in the Christmas spirit that evening. And about a month later, we went to her family church. And again, I had this feeling. And at the end of the service, I just stood up and walked up front when they asked if anybody wanted to join the church. And that's how I got saved. I got saved that day. But it took me back to when God spoke to me, not someone who had confessed to him, not someone who had went and told everyone about him. He just spoke to me and said, let your son go and give him to me. And that's what got me saved. And that's when I knew that God had something for me to do. And I immediately instilled that into my other children. I used to say, listen, you can see your brother again, but you've got to believe in Christ. You've got to confess. And I'm glad to say that all my children have been baptized and all of them are saved. And I was actually privileged to be actually in the baptism pool with 3 of my children when they were baptized. So what I'm saying to you is, no matter what you feel, no matter what others believe or no matter what you actually believe, just listen. Listen for God's voice. Listen for those things that are a little bit out of the ordinary. Listen when you should stop walking, or when someone turns around and you're wondering, why are you seeing that? When you look down before you step off stairs and there's a ball or a stick that you can slip over. When you're out of money, but you find money on your front porch, or someone loans you something who would never speak to you. Believe me, God is working in your life because he loves you even though you haven't confessed. And if you are one of those who've confessed and left, just come back to him. His arms are open. He's waiting for you. He's waiting for all of us. We are his children and he loves us.